Now, Penn State's secondary is pretty stacked, but I don't think many people were expecting this guy to win a starting job.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. Help me welcome a very special guest from the Hardcore Penn State Football Podcast. That is Shawn Kane. Paying some homage to your partner in crime, Corey. I don't think I did it justice, but Shawn's joining us here to talk about the surprise winner of a key position battle for Penn State. Not many people were expecting this, but gained some steam throughout fall camp, and now it's come to fruition. We're also going to talk about the freshmen that were greenlit so far and two surprises that did not make that category, but also the status of a wide receiver that is dealing with an injury, should be good to go for Nevada, but just something to keep an eye on with all the wide receiver woes that Penn State has had over the course of the past few seasons. Again, let us know your thoughts down in the comment section. Be a part of the conversation. Shawn, Antoine Belgrave-Shorter is that player that is going to be the starting strong safety. Now, James Franklin announced this in his press conference this week leading up to Nevada. I do want to preface that Mack and Dejuan Lane are going to rotate in, but this is a little bit surprising just because it seemed like everything was pointing towards Dejuan Lane from last season. He was talked about a lot as a true freshman, and Antoine Belgrave-Shorter, second-year player, both in the same category of going into that sophomore, redshirt freshman sophomore campaign. But I like Antoine Belgrave-Shorter, and it shows what a change in system can do for a player to unlock their potential. I think Jim Knowles' system actually fits Belgrave-Shorter better, which is why he got the starting job.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that last part. I think a lot of it, is system-based. And I think when you have somebody come in like a Jim Knowles, he has a certain type of safety that he's looking for. And apparently Antoine Belgrave-Shorter fits that. I really liked him out of high school. I thought he was underrated. I think Corey actually posted a video of me talking about him on signing day from a couple of years ago. But yeah, I mean, it is surprising just because I think everybody else included on our show, we were all thinking Mack, we were all thinking Dejuan Lane because we saw Dejuan Lane last year. Mack played a bit at Bama, not always so great, but he does have experience, and he's a little bit, I think he's a little bit older than Antoine Belgrave-Shorter as well. So yeah, it was a bit surprising, but then Franklin did mention that he led the team in turnovers during camp. And we know Franklin, two things that he constantly talking about is winning the turnover battle and winning the explosive play battle. Mm-hmm. And if they think Belgrave-Shorter is going to help them with that, having two ball hawks at safety with him and Zakee Wheatley kind of makes a lot of sense when you think about it like that.
It also gives a little insight to the slot cornerback as well. It's not just about Antoine Belgrave-Shorter. It's also about that Zion Tracy. I mean, Zion Tracy was someone that's come on strong. There was a question particularly about him in this press conference. But Mack was brought back, return of the Mack, to fight for that slot cornerback spot. And now he was in that slot cornerback battle, but then moved over to strong safety because he is not obviously your typical strong safety. You want someone that is a hybrid player, that's a linebacker. Antoine Belgrave-Shorter isn't that linebacker prototype, right? Dejuan Lane, I think, is a little closer because he's almost 215. He's over 6 foot, 210 pounds. And then Belgrave-Shorter is 6 foot, officially listed around 200. But Mack has a smaller build than them. I mean, he's 5'9". He's closer to 185. That's not your typical strong safety. So I think Zion Tracy really settled in at the slot corner spot. And then they moved Mack over to say, all right, well, push for strong safety because we just know that you're a good ball player. And then Belgrave-Shorter emerges here. So it continues to show the depth that Penn State is building just across the secondary in general. And Belgrave-Shorter, I think because Penn State and Jim Knowles they're gonna run a lot of man coverage this year. Tom Allen defaulted to a lot of, let's play it safe type of zone coverages. I mean, Knowles is going to get aggressive with some of this man coverage. We saw it at Ohio State, and it's going to lead to more turnovers. And that's good news when you hear that Belgrave-Shorter wins the turnover battle, and wins the turnover, the king of the turnovers, right? Or turnover king that Zachy Wheatley has always been prone to do. And it was ABS this time around.
Yeah, and the funny thing with Knowles' defense at Ohio State last season, they were very good. The one thing they didn't do that great of a job with was turning the ball over. They had elite safety play, but it was just a different type. Like, they would just stifle teams. Penn State was the most obvious victim of that. But if you could turn, and it seems they're really excited about these corners. So if you could get those ball hawking safeties over the top too, man, that could be a really, really special secondary.
I know that safety was at least a position that was questionable. Defensive tackle, somewhat, and linebacker, I think, do hold those. They need some more certainty there. But I say stock up on this safety group now, that it was really just Zachy Wheatley, and hopefully Zachy Wheatley plays a full season. I have him tabbed as one of those players alongside Zane Durant, obviously Drew Aller, but guys that, Penn State can't really afford to lose them for the entirety of a season, let alone a long stretch. But now when you have somebody like Belgrave-Shorter emerge, you can move King Mack around to be a backup to Zion Tracy, to be a backup at the strong safety position. You don't need to force Dejuan Lane when clearly he is not ready. I thought that Dejuan Lane was going to be one of those breakout second year, sophomore, whatever, redshirt freshman players, and he just hasn't lived up to the hype that Penn State, I think, internally had for him. I think eventually he will figure it out, but they clearly don't trust him enough, and that's why you see the emergence of Belgrave-Shorter here. So with Belgrave-Shorter stepping up and taking a much further step than people would have expected, that just allows Penn State some flexibility, but you don't have to force somebody out of position. You now help your depth because of one player.
Yeah, and I think really, like, having a guy come out of nowhere, not completely out of nowhere, but somebody that surprised a lot of people that pay very, very close attention to this team and win the job. It speaks a lot to the depth and the player development that Penn State has here. I think if anybody listens to our show, I'm always talking about how much I love Anthony Poindexter. I think Anthony Poindexter is going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. And it's part of it is because he's just on top of being a great recruiter, he is a great developer of talent. And I think they have four guys, and Franklin even kind of alluded to that they have four guys that they do trust. But Belgrave-Shorter just went out and straight up won the job. And I think and they even got guys like Babu Toure, who I think not this year maybe, but next year is going to be a contributor.
And that just goes along with, again, we're going to talk about the freshmen in the final segment. One of them is a defensive back and somebody that Jim Knowles has been enamored with since he stepped on campus. We're talking extremely high praise. So Penn State's secondary overall, mainly at cornerback, but now safety just is solidifying itself. And it's good to see when when Penn State intends to make a national title run. But there was some clarity on what's been going on with one of the transfers for Penn State, and it's at wide receiver. It seems like he's going to be okay, but I want to talk about the importance of Devonte Ross and why Penn State could not afford to lose him for an extended period of time. That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race. Do you think it's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or maybe it's Joe Burrow? Or do you like a running back? How about Saquon Barkley, former Penn State running back Saquon Barkley? It's time for a running back to win MVP. You can crown your champion in August. So the Chiefs and the Eagles were just at the Super Bowl. Maybe the Bills break through. It's the Lions. Or do you have a dark horse contender? And get this, you can actually parlay your division winners, even your dark horse picks, all together. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only over at FanDuel. That's FanDuel. Play your game. And before we get back to the podcast, we have a very special request of all of you. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. And everyone who completes a survey will be entered in for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. So Devonte Ross has been dealing with bumps and bruises. I think that rumor was floating around a little bit, but there really wasn't any clarification on it. And then James Franklin announced at the press conference, hey, he has been dealing with an injury. And if you go to practice, you can see that he, at least his one arm is wrapped up. So he's dealing with some sort of upper body injury. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not going to pretend to be, but at least we know that it is an upper body injury. And he was participating in practice. It's not like he was, hey, those announcements that so-and-so is missing, so-and-so's absent, or that you see him in the practice highlights. He's going through those drills that circulate on social media. But now we see that Ross wasn't 100% all of this offseason. He is practicing. His status is that he's going to play against Nevada. You don't need him in this out-of-conference schedule, but Devonte Ross, you need him long-term because he is the key that opens up this offense. He opens up the offense with the speed factor. So when you have Ross going on a deep post or a fly route, and it commands some safety help because your outside corner is not going to be fast enough to keep up with him, good luck. It opens up running lanes for Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen and Penn State to really lean into what they want to do, and that's run the rock as much as possible.
Yeah, the thing about bumps and a bruised Devonte Ross is they don't really have another guy like him.
Maybe Josiah Brown, one that's ready.
Maybe,
anyway.
Yeah. So somebody that's ready. Like they have some, and you go to practice. So I know a lot of the writers are really excited about the young guys and how good physically they look. It's just a matter of being ready to go and play. But as far as the 6 guys that Franklin mentioned, nobody's like Devonte Ross out of any of those guys. Tysier Denmark, he's kind of a jack of all trades, but he doesn't have that quickness and short area quickness that a Devonte Ross has. So I think that's one of the things that you have to worry about if you're Penn State. And James Franklin will never say this, but Devonte Ross probably won't. I'm not going to say definitively. I wouldn't think they're going to ask a ton out of him these next 3 games.
And why should they?
They shouldn't, because can we win with Liam Clifford playing more than Devonte Ross? Yeah. Against Nevada and Villanova and FIU? Yes. Against Oregon? Probably not. We need him to beat Oregon. In my view. That's the big concern with potentially not having him. And now when you said upper body injury, is it like shoulder that's wrapped up or a hand?
I would say his upper arm. I saw it around his arm.
I'd rather it be his hand, or, if he broke a finger or something, well, that'll be better in a month. But shoulders could be tough. Like look at Tony Rojas last year. He played the whole year with a shoulder injury, and he played, but he was not as effective. We never really knew.
We just kind of, and then eventually we got the answer that, hey, he wasn't 100%, and he still performed admirably. So, but
he's still pretty good, but not what we were thinking he would be.
Right, and I think in Devonte Ross's case, I don't want to say one way or another, hey, this makes me glad, this doesn't, but when Devonte Ross's asset is his speed, is his burst, it's a good thing it's not a foot or an ankle or something like that.
Sure.
You can still utilize him in ball games. I think for now, you just have to be kind of selective. There's nothing that he needs to prove against Nevada FIU, Villanova, and then you have the bye week, fortunately for Penn State, before you gear up for Oregon. You get 2 weeks to prepare for that team at home in the whiteout. Let's look at the wide receiver core as it is, because like we've already kind of pointed out, there really isn't a complement to Devonte Ross. There isn't a second speedster on the team that is ready. James Franklin said the rotation is going to look like, which is interesting when we talk about the greenlit freshmen, that he said the 6 wide receivers that they're going to use primarily to start are Ross, Kyron Hudson, Trevor Pena, go figure, right? They didn't bring them in to be backups or be afterthoughts. And then it's Tyseer Denmark, Koby Howard, and Liam Clifford in no particular order of that 1 through 6, but your starters are going to be those 3 transfers, and your backups are going to be those 3 players, with Koby Howard, I guess, on the outside looking in at the moment. I would assume he has the yellow light, which we'll discuss more here. Mm-hmm. But this rotation is obviously a massive step in the right direction. However, if you don't have Devonte Ross, if you don't have Kyron Hudson, if you don't have Trevor Pena, do you fall back into a situation where it's 2024 all over again and you're having your wide receiver problems because now so let's say Kyron Hudson's unavailable, you double up on Trevor Pena, or you double up on Devonte Ross. And then it becomes just keying in on one player and taking them away. I don't see it to that extent because I think the offensive line's better. I think the running backs are better. And the tight ends, there's a quantity of them. It's not just about one Tyler Warren, as great as that was. You now have to account for 3 potential playmakers at that spot at a given time. So I think Andy Kotelnicki's going to have a little more creativity there. But yeah, like any position, if you lose one to an injury, things start to get questionable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from what it sounds like too, and I know we're going to talk about him, I think they really like Koby Howard as a receiver. I think Franklin kept mentioning special teams with him, and it was a little confusing to me because I was like, well, he could still play receiver, we could still have him. And I understand what he's saying too. Like they want him to be able to do more things, but I don't really, from my perspective as a fan, I don't really care if he's not ready on special teams. If he can contribute as a receiver, we need him, then I want him out there, Mm-hmm.
I think that's primarily, maybe it's a motivational thing or something, just a little bit of coach speak. You wouldn't,
True.
It is counterintuitive to say that, okay, he doesn't necessarily have the green light because of a special teams dilemma, but he's in that first 6 rotation. He wouldn't have made that rotation of wide receivers. I think he's a yellow turning green. He's kind of in that middle area where ultimately I think at the end of the day, he is going to be a green light, kind of like Yvan Kemajou. So the wide receiver position, I've seen all great things. I've heard all great things as well from other sources. But at the same time, remember that an injury to one player or a second, let's not talk any further than that, can really limit what Penn State wants to do. It's the balance that this wide receiver core gives them that opens up so many other, again, why are we talking about Devonte Ross? Because he helps open up the ground game with what he's able to do in the open field.
Yeah, for sure. And don't forget, Penn State's already down one receiver in Caden Saunders. And I get Caden Saunders is, unfortunately, he's got that injury bug really, really bad, and he's been hurt quite a bit. But he was at least the 7th guy that's played a lot of football here. Yeah. At least, he's gotten good experience, and we don't have him. And after those 6 guys, I know they like guys like Peter Gonzalez. I think we mentioned Josiah Brown, mm-hmm. Some of the young guys like Matthew Otten, but I don't think any of them are really ready for
not game ready,
helping us, in a playoff run.
Yeah. So we'll see if they do get those reps. Lyric Samuel's another name, just to
Lyric Samuel too, yeah.
At least had a strong off-season fall camp. Maybe not to put him into the rotation, but if he continues to do the right things, maybe he is included towards the end of the season. So we'll see. But wide receiver Devonte Ross needs to stay healthy, so we're on the same page that there's not much you need to prove in this non-conference slate. With that being said, so we mentioned Koby Howard, mentioned Yvan Kemajou, guys who did not get the green light. 2 freshmen definitively did. Could other players join them in this group? We're going to talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is also brought to you by Redshirt. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Redshirt Ready. Redshirt Ready is the next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Redshirt's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under the tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options have not worked, Redshirt might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head over to redshirt.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Redshirt website for full safety information. Darius, Dixon, and Chaz Coleman officially get the green light. So for those who aren't familiar, they do a stoplight analogy here. Red light means you're redshirting at all costs. These can change. These are fluid situations. You can be a red light that goes to a yellow light. Maybe you work your way all the way up to a green light. Who knows? That is a rare occurrence. Same thing if you're a green light and regress all the way to a red light. But it's mainly about, okay, yellow lights can go to green lights can go to yellow lights. Darius, Dixon, and Chaz Coleman officially get that green light. Yvan, Kemajou, and Koby Howard, the way that they've been talked about, the discourse around them, It genuinely is hard for me to believe that they are kind of yellow lights. I really do think they're one step or one play or one discussion away from officially being green lit to burn their red shirt. But Chaz Coleman, that's interesting because of what was said about Zuriah Fisher. It's needed because defensive end, you're losing Abdul Carter. And we'll talk about Darius Dixon in the cornerback room and defensive backfield again with what we said in respect to Antoine Belgrave-Shorter. But to focus on Chaz Coleman, Zuriah Fisher is still dealing with the issues with the injury. I don't think that he's injured, but I think that he's still dealing with the recovery of getting back to 110%. And then you lose an Abdul Carter, who was the best defensive end, the best pass rusher, best edge defender in college football. We saw what he did against Notre Dame with one arm, for crying out loud. It didn't translate to a win, but he was able to keep Penn State in that game. And then you have denied Dennis Sutton, but after that, there's a lot of uncertainty, which is also why, okay, Yvan Kemajou, why doesn't he have the green light when it's denied Dennis Sutton, Zuriah Fisher, with now a little bit of questionability given that, he's still dealing with some of the lingering effects of his long-term injury, and Chaz Coleman. You have three defensive ends, Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams. We just don't know what they can do. There's a lot of unknown here.
Yeah. And, just listening to what Franklin said last week about Chaz Coleman, just how excited he is, made me feel real excited, man. And he just got here in the spring to be this ready. I think it speaks a lot about just his maturity and his preparedness. Deion Barnes. Yeah, Deion Barnes, man. He's a great coach. And then Darius Dixon, that's a deep cornerback room already. So to add somebody, for them to think so much of him to make him a green light at this point in a pretty deep room, that says a lot about him as well. And then I know I do expect Kemajou to play a lot. I would be very, very surprised if he didn't burn his red shirt, especially with how long of a season it very well may be. And then, and we already talked a little bit about Koby Howard. I think he's going to play quite a bit. Somebody I wanted to bring up as well. Do you think we see Alex Tash potentially burn his red shirt?
If he's going to take those steps forward. So Jim Knowles is not shy about giving both praise and criticism. He said that I don't really trust anybody in the linebacker room outside of Amari Campbell and Dom DeLuca and obviously Tony Rojas. But then he brings up a player like Alex Tatch. He's like, you see it with him, and I'm generally paraphrasing here with what Jim Knowles has said, but he names him and basically alludes to the fact that he still has more to uncover in this case. So I think Alex Tatch, because I don't expect LeVar Arrington to burn his red shirt. I think LeVar Arrington II is going to be a player that it sits and waits, and he'll be ready to go because he has all the athleticism, he has all the raw potential, but I think the game is a little too fast for him. That's what typically happens. These players are physically, for the most part, developed. In certain cases, that's not always the right. Defensive line's very difficult, which is why Chaz Coleman's evolution here, going from a late enrollee to this guy could be the backup to Zariah Fisher. So Darius Dixon, who is supposed to be a senior in high school, may I remind everybody, is going to be a key contributor and already has that green light right away and is going to factor into that cornerback room that has A.J. Harris and Elliott Washington and Davian Collins, who are all either, all conference or starting caliber, to say the least. And then Kenny Wosley is somebody that's emerged. And then there's Zion Tracy. And I know that's the slot cornerback spot too, but they're just going to use a lot of DBs in this Jim Knowles defense. I'm interested. I want to know more about, it's not necessarily about the freshmen who are, green light, yellow light, red light, regardless. It's more so about, what about the second year guys? Okay, so you mentioned Alex Tatch. What about Anthony Specca? What about Jalen Harvey? What about Malachi Williams? Where do those guys stand? So what is their status? Do they have the metaphorical green light, or are they still developing?
Yeah, it's a good way to put it too, because I think these sophomores or redshirt freshmen. I talked a lot about Specca last year. I mean, how could you not talk about this offense and not mention Tyzer Denmark? Right. And how excited everybody is about him. I do think Khalil Dinkins ends up winning the tight end job, but Luke Reynolds is gonna play a lot. So yeah, having these, there's a lot of focus on our season preview that Corey and I are gonna do later tonight. A big part of what we're gonna talk, when we were talking about, well, how are we gonna attack this? We're gonna talk a lot about the depth and because people know Singleton and Aller, DDS, Durant. Yeah, we have a lot of stars coming back. There's a lot of star power. But that's not necessarily going to win us the national championship. It's going to be these depth guys. It's going to be these guys stepping up, these young guys that probably didn't even play a lot of football yet for Penn State. That's going to make the difference between Penn State beating the Oregons, beating the Ohio States, and then in the playoffs beating whoever we play. So they're going to be the guys that need to step up, because in a long season, there's going to be injuries. It's just the nature of the beast when you're playing potentially 17 games.
I'll name drop, just for the sake of the conversation, a couple of freshmen, true freshmen, because it's not so much out of necessity. Malachi Goodman is a player that would play if the opportunity presented himself. He is a ready-to-go type of player. He probably has that yellow light, so he's on standby. But Penn State's offensive line is so deep that you have the luxury of redshirting this guy, allowing him to develop, and getting him those 4 games of experience strategically. And maybe he's a difference maker in the playoffs. Who knows? But I think Malachi Goodman would start at a lot of other places, but he's going to be on the bench because there's just not a need for him at this point in time. Daniel Jennings is another wait-and-see type of player at defensive end. He foregoes his senior season, changed with his coaching staff, high school setup, and physically developed to a point where Penn State's, this makes a ton of sense to have you enroll ahead of your final season in high school. And as somebody that has been mentioned, Deshaun Burnett's also been mentioned loosely, but it's still important to point out. So Chaz Coleman is getting all of the buzz and the recognition, as he should be at this point in time. I don't think Daniel Jennings in particular, Deshaun Burnett too, but when I look at Daniel Jennings, he's 250 already, and he's supposed to be a senior, 250 pounds, and he's a senior in high school. So that is important at that defensive end spot. Deion Barnes has his work cut out for him to prepare first and second year players to at least somewhat not let the production slack off completely with the likes of Abdul Carter moving on. And that means it's also a lot on Denai Dennis Sutton to perform well above expectations. I don't think people see him as that much of a pass rushing threat. I can easily see him getting to double digits and then some.
Yeah, me too. And, when Corey and I were talking about overall depth, linebackers versus defensive line. I was more worried about the depth on the defensive line because you think about at the end of the way last season ended, coming back, everyone was thinking, well, Vanover's probably going to get that waiver because since he just doesn't seem to deny waivers except to poor Vanover.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Smith-Vilbert was supposed to be back and Max Granville. And then you still had Zariah Fisher and all these guys, Jalen Harvey coming up. But then, yeah, suddenly you lose most of those guys. Zariah Fisher, Franklin, his comments made me a little uneasy about, he was raving about how well he was practicing and everything. And then today he's like, well, he's still dealing with some things coming back and it's a little scary. That might not even mean anything either. But it just made me put an eyebrow up a little bit. And yeah, what could have been if and one thing I just keep thinking of, just what ifs, Smith-Vilbert really should have stayed because he would have played a ton this year for Penn State. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, in the NIL marketplace, you don't know how those things go down. So we don't have any clarity on that, but at least defensive end, there's a lot to like, but at the same time, a lot to be skeptical of. So we'll see how it goes throughout the season. In Penn State, in a formidable spot to where they're not up against the wall at this given moment. So they have the games to get these guys seasoned, ready to go when it does matter. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Zach Seyko, your host as always. So grateful to have the time from Shawn Kane of Hardcore Penn State Football, the Hardcore Penn State Football Podcast, joining me here to talk about all things as we lead up to the Penn State-Nevada game and then Big Ten play. So Shawn, thank you so much for the time and can't wait to have you back on the show if you are able and willing.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.